What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from BackTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today we're going to do Only Murders in the Building, Season 4, Episode 9. Basically, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be, so if you want to scroll back to my Season 4, Episode 8 review, you'll be like, yeah, he, he was close. I didn't see the Ron Howard thing coming, though. That was definitely, that was a, kudos to Ron, by the way. And I love how, I mean, this episode made me giggle a couple times. I loved the, ooh, finally a celebrity. Of course, they have so many like major stars. I think I mentioned earlier, in like another, in one of the other episodes too of me doing this, that sort of like my like wish list for season 5 was Tom Hanks, and then they like put Tom Hanks in here, and it's I feel like they're trying to wish dict, Tom Hanks. I feel like somebody has whispered this in Tom Hanks's ear and been like, "Would you do Only Murders in the Building if you were asked?" And he was like, "Yes, I would do that show. I love it," or something like that. And they were like, "Oh my god, if we mention him, he will come." They try to Field of Dreams Tom Hanks into the show. So, um, yeah, I'm I'm quite appreciative of this season, this episode. I will tell you that there was one thing that threw me and that I thought was really odd. And I was like, there has to be something to this, right? And it's the fact that Glenn, Irish Glenn, happens to have an Irish nurse in New York City. And that threw me. And I was like, is she really a nurse? Is this going to be some like, I was like, is there an unexpected rabbit hole here that we're going to go down? Is this like his sister? Is this his wife? Is this, maybe there is something to the Glens. They really threw me by casting because it's so specific to have an actress with an Irish accent in that role just as the nurse. Like, how many times have you been in a hospital and your nurse has been Irish? And then think about if you were also, I mean, like, it's just an infinitesimal percentage of possibility there, but they went with it and it threw me. And that was the one time I got thrown this episode where I was like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What's up with this nurse? What's up with her accent? We've got Irish Glenn and we've got Irish nurse. I don't know. But basically, Oliver, Mabel, and Charles rushed to the hospital to talk to Glenn after realizing that he was on set, but Glenn is still recuperating and the nurse won't let them in, which also made it seem shady. I was like, why won't she let them in? I don't know. This nurse is maybe they waited till the ninth episode to introduce the killer. Um, but I found her inclusion so shady, and it's honestly it was because of the accent, because of the specificity of just the oddness of having. Um, but sadly, once again, rest in peace, Paul Rudd, again on the show. Uh, he's now died twice. I think they should bring him back every season as like a new character and just kill him off again. Uh, just see if Paul Rudd's down for that every season. Be like, we'd love to we have a new way for you to come back. Unfortunately, you're going to die again for the third time. So, it turns out Ben has a twin brother, like we forgot to mention that. Uh, he has an identical twin brother that he was separated from birth, and or maybe Glenn does. I don't know. But I think that would be funny to see have happen. They're not allowed in, so they're trying to figure out what else to do, and Selena uh, goes to Molly Shannon's character and I forget her name, is trying to get this thing because about Ron Howard. They figured out the guy that was running the bar for stunt performers. They were like, well, who was this stunt performer that Zaz was afraid of? And he's like, I don't know. The only people who knew were Zaz, Glenn, and Ron Howard, the director, which is funny. But and that's when they got finally a celebrity. Uh, So Selena tries to go there and get, where's Ron Howard, because Oliver has this weird story about how he met Ron at a Chinese restaurant and with the soup and everything, and it just feels like one of those stories that he has that goes nowhere. But then, like, I love that they incorporated that, and even the stupid little, like, him making the mime movements with the soup. Um, the fact that Ron Howard did that also, I thought was hilarious. Like the fact that, because Oliver Story's from like 1988. He's like, oh yeah, Ron and I, we just stayed up all night and talked in 1988, this one time. So of course we're friends, many years later. And they're like, well, why did you have his phone number? I don't know, because it was 1988 and we didn't have cell phones. Um, so the fact that that worked out and that it was, I thought, was brilliant. He's also talking about, getting married, and Charles makes an offer to just get a drink, and he thinks that means Charles wants to throw him a bachelor party. And so he starts talking about this like elaborate, like all these, and Charles gets really frustrated because he just wanted to have a drink with his friend. And they go to this whole thing. Oliver makes a comment about how he has to switch his emergency contact to Loretta, and it led to this really nice scene between the two of them, where Charles was like, "You're my emotional, you're my emergency contact, and I knew I was yours, and I just kind of thought we would grow older together." And I think he's like, "Now I'm just like the third wheel," and this is a really nice scene for the two of them, because I don't know what they're going to continue to do with Loretta and Meryl Streep, but I mean, if Meryl is willing to continue to keep showing up for 2 or 3 episodes a season, she could very well be back for season 5. I'm surprised she's still here, but she could also, in the final episode, break it off with Oliver, or Oliver could break it off with her, and then they could give Meryl the reprieve, or maybe Meryl's down for it. I don't know. The fact that Meryl Streep and Paul Rudd came back at all was surprising to me. So, because they really felt like they were season 3 characters that didn't necessarily need to come back for this plot line. The fact that Divine Joy Randolph came back, well, she is a cop, so she is sort of in one of those positions where you can just keep bringing her character back. Uh, you don't, they're not really, you don't really need to explain it, Um, but it ends up that the person who was the stunt, we see it keeps cutting to Zaz and how she meets the stunt performer, and they're setting up this stunt on Ron's movie. Meanwhile, the gang is trying to get onto set of Ron's movie, and it's this. I love that Molly Shannon says it's like this really sort of autobiographical, uh, like small movie with a $200 million budget, and then it ends up being like a monster movie, and like they work themselves in as background actors who are supposed to like scream and run away from a monster, and that doesn't work out for them. And then they happen to be eating at this Chinese restaurant, and then that's how they find Ron Howard. But Selena goes back, and she's trying to work the problem. She's been asked, Molly Shannon asks her, and this is where I got confirmation. There was a thing here where Molly Shannon had a line drop at the beginning, and it confirmed what I said last episode. See, I moved away from Howard. And this episode honestly moved away from Howard too, which was so odd. Howard's not in this episode at all. And that to me was weird, because Howard has been like all over this series, which is one of the reasons why I was like, he has such an increased amount of screen time. It's really hard to not consider him as a potential killer here, because he would have understood how to maneuver through the buildings and everything like that. So I was all on Howard, to be like a surprise reveal. Like, I've been here all along and you didn't see me, I thought his big reveal was going to be, I'm as much of the podcast as anybody else, but nobody ever mentions me, blah, blah, blah. Because they were giving him, like basically no one else was in the building. Like, no one else lives here but Howard anymore. There's no ensemble from season 1. They're all gone. It's just Howard. But then he's like completely absent from this episode, and they totally could have used him to sit outside and wait for Glenn. Like, that would have been an excellent use of Howard. would have been, okay, so we have to go do this thing. Howard, can you wait and see if Glenn wakes up and then ask him this question? So, since they've been incorporating him in basically like every other aspect of their life, it felt weird that they were like, let's not ask Howard, it's, whoops, forgot him. And that would have saved sort of Glenn's life in the end. But uh, there's a scene where Molly Shannon says that she's got this, and she's like, what do you think your character would say this? She's trying to talk to Selena, and she's like, it feels like every rewrite I've gotten has just been just worse. It's like, I've got this original script and it's really great, and everything else has been, after that, has been worse. And I was like, oh, that's because he's not really the writer. I was like, that's because kind of what I predicted with Howard, with uh, whatever his name is, the writer. I was like, he kind of disappeared for a while there, and I was like, I bet it's him because I can't see it being anybody else at this point. I thought kind of maybe Molly Shannon because of a reference to a musical where the producer was the killer, but I was like, we just did that. We just did the producer thing. I see the reference, but at the same time, I'm like, it can't be producers back to back. So then after I realized that Howard, in the scene where he goes and he uncovers the truth about the Westies, I was like, he's doing it by himself. Like, he doesn't need to be doing that. So he could just make that up. The fact that they're showing us as an audience is to clear Howard, because he's giving them pertinent information to move the plot forward. That he doesn't actually need to do. If he was the killer, he would know, and he would maneuver the plot in the way that he would need to. He doesn't actually need to go verify anything because he already knows what to, you know what I'm saying? Like, he already knows the truth. He knows the truth isn't going to show that the Westies kill anybody. So he wouldn't, it's an pointless thing to do. So, I was like, well, the only person we have left at that point is really the writer, because it's definitely not one of the three celebrities playing them. Like, that would have been a bizarre plot twist. Would have been if, like, Zach Galifianakis was the killer. Like, well, he's not a stunt man. Like, what, like, see, Zaz is, it's just it's not a thing. So, yeah, it's the writer, and he has Zaz's script. Mabel is there, and she's helping him read the dialogue and punching up and trying to. And it reminded me of that thing after he met Oliver, and Oliver was giving some like thoughts on the rewrite, or Charles, or one of them, and then the script came back with like these really just sort of like obvious rewrites, like they were sort of glaring and sort of mean spirited. I was like, I think maybe this dude is, but at that point, a lot of people seemed weird and unhinged. Like, so did the brother sisters. So, but yeah, it's the writer. So, which Mabel finds out while alone with him in this room. So hopefully she can get out of that room. And I don't think that there's another major reveal. And when they're talking about how it had to be two people to do it, no, it didn't, because he's a stuntman. So if he was trained as a stuntman, Zaz would have told him in a way of how to get from point A to point B. So I don't think there has to be another killer in this. Somebody else who is helping him out. Maybe there is. Maybe there's somebody else who was in place to dispose of the body, but and maybe that's the reveal in the end is, well, who helped him? I just don't think that. I doubt that's the case. I was thinking that with Glenn. I was like, well, that would be the reason why it would be Glenn, would be because we just saw him do all those backflips and everything, and Oliver wasn't able to do it, but Oliver's also like in his 70s, so of course he wasn't able to like run back and forth in that period of time. But somebody like Glenn might have been able to. So, yeah, it was a fun episode, and we got down to it, and now it's time to see the why, the who, how things went down, and get all the answers, and how does this land, and do they save Mabel? Of course they save Mabel. You know, what is the setup? Do they go forward with the wedding with Loretta? They have a lot of things to wrap up, so it doesn't feel weird to me that we know who the killer is and there's still an episode left, because it's like we still have to, is Oliver marrying Loretta? You know, they're going through with that. What happens to the movie? They have other questions that they have to wrap up in the finale, other than who's the killer. You know, now they have to just basically tell us why he's the killer, and then wrap up all of the other plot lines and possibly set up season 5, like they did last time with Zaz being shot at the end of season 3. So, do I think that they'll do that? Maybe, but I don't know that they're going to take out somebody in the same way that it would be Zaz. In the same sort of Zazzy way of it being that big of a character to take out. So it may just be a wrap up, and then uh, hinting at where they might go for season 5, instead of just flat out being like, whoops, we killed off a major character for us. So uh, I'll give Only Murders in the Building season 4, episode 9. I'll give it an A minus. I mean, there are a couple of things that sort of glared at me as being like odd choices, like unnecessary throw offs and little sort of like loopholes. Like, where was Howard, and why is he like all over every single episode except this one? Why did she have an Irish accent? Like, what was the intent behind that? Just some questions that I have that are like lingering on, like, hey, was that necessary? But overall, I thought it was really entertaining. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys next week for the finale of Only Murders in the Building.